Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Royal Council. My name is Baron Botch, and with us is Duke Dre. And obviously, we're a little light this evening. Lewis broke his laptop, and the Queen is not feeling well. So send your well wishes her way. She does have trouble with her health sometimes. So we wish her the best, of course, and we wish she was here. Speaking of Queen, we're going to cover. We told you that we were going to cover women's wrestling involving the other promotions, but we really can't do that because Queen is not here and it would just be weird, right? So we're
Yes,
going to take
sir.
a pass on that one. We'll hold on to it for when Queen can be with us when she's feeling better. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe. This channel's been around a while, but we never really pushed this. But we're noticing we're having kind of an uptick in viewers. So if you could, just like the video, or even at the bottom in the comments, just tell us how you feel. And then don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you'll know when we put up the next video, which we'll do every week. Every Friday, a new video will go up, as long as I can get it edited in time. But generally Friday or Saturday, one of those two. But we'll have videos every week. And this is proof that we're sticking to that theory, because here we are, in spite of the fact that we're a little light tonight. We're still doing one for you. We're recording this at night, the previous night before you get it. So anyway, Dre and I talked a little bit before we started, and we decided that the best course of action would be to cover the greatest stables of all time. We thought that might be a fun topic. Dre mentioned it, and I thought it was really cool. So we'll go ahead and get into that then. Duke Dre, if you can, tell us who your favorite stable is, or the best stable in your mind based on mic work.
Oh man, based on mic work, you know, obviously the NWO would have to be up there. Hill Hogan, that was, obviously we know the impact that they had on the industry as a whole. Kevin Nash was always really good on the mic. Scott Hall was pretty solid too. That original three was top notch. You can't the heat that they got, from fans throwing popcorn or fruit in the ring, tomatoes, whatever, was great. DX, Shawn Michaels, Triple H. Those was like 1A, 1B. That's really really great on the mic.
Yeah, it's kind of the
Just
same thing, really. Those two stables are much the same, because I mean, obviously, all of us know that they were friends, and it's
yeah,
interesting that you mentioned Kevin Nash too, because I mean, there was a stretch there where like every WCW Monday Night Nitro began with Kevin Nash on a microphone,
yeah, yeah.
holding it like it was a toothpick because his hands are huge, and just kind of going off about anything, because they just send him out there and be like, okay, where am I supposed to? What point do you want me to get to?
yeah,
And sometimes they'd tell him, sometimes they wouldn't, and he'd just like, okay, and he'd just take the microphone and just go out there and proceed to kill it,
yeah,
just
yeah. Just
week in and
amazing.
week out.
Yeah, even going into TNA with him, he was always solid on the mic. But yeah, those
Yeah.
NWO years were amazing. Me watching that as a kid, I was hooked. Flip over to DX doing the exact same thing. Um,
Yeah, but it's like they were different in the sense that like NWO could just be violent. Like
yeah,
they could just be incredibly mean. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And DX were different in the sense that they could go a little further. Like NWO could imply meanness, but they couldn't show a tremendous amount of it because of now what we know to be standards and practices.
yeah,
But in WWE or WWF, whatever it was, that it was right on the edge of F and E. They could do whatever they wanted.
Oh yeah, it was free reign. By '97, Vince was like, "Hey, say whatever, do whatever.
Yeah,
We'll deal with the consequences later if there are any."
and there weren't, like, there were no
Yeah,
consequences, but they could be just as nasty as they want to be to steal a
yeah.
friend from Two Live Crew. They could just do anything and get away
That's a
with
very
it.
good reference right there. That's a very good.
That's basically what Raw
Yeah,
was at that point. It was
yeah.
basically just a Two Live Crew album that happened in a ring. It was just absolute madness, and I mean, to the point that I checked out for a while, because I'm not trying to see all that. But it yeah, and they, more than anything, like the thing that I think made DX work so well is that they took the humor angle.
Yeah,
They
and
were just hilarious.
and they could all talk too. Even once they brought in the New Age Outlaws, once Shawn Michaels exited, it still never really lost a beat.
No, not oh, you didn't know. Like,
Yeah,
he could
I
talk his
mean,
face off.
yeah, yeah, Road Dogg, yeah, amazing.
Yeah. And the fact that Billy Gunn couldn't was made a part of their whole presentation. Like they
Hey,
made it a virtue.
Billy had the looks, that's what he had going for him. But it
Yeah,
worked though. It worked.
yeah. And he had 2 words for you half the time. But that's all he could. He couldn't do anything else. But it
Yeah.
was a virtue because it was fun when he would do it. He would
Yeah.
make the most of those 5 seconds.
Yeah. Exactly.
It was all he needed.
And then as far as another group, you can't, even though it was just one guy. I mean, Ric Flair on the mic was.
Oh gosh, when he had it, he had it. Well, I do want to finish up with Kevin Nash a bit though, because I remember when and this isn't just like the Kevin Nash show, but I remember when he had that angle with CM Punk, like his very last angle.
Yeah.
And how bad it was. It just it's proof that you can lose it.
Yeah, he seemed really out of his element.
Maybe that's what it was in his defense. Maybe he was just kind of out of water. Maybe that's what it was.
And it happened with The Rock too. When he came back, when he was having the the battle with John Cena back in 2012, he was a little off his game too, but he recovered the next year though, definitely.
Yeah, he did. It must have, maybe it was just that. Maybe I'm not being fair. Maybe it just was kind of an unfamiliar element. But I remember watching it and thinking, man, Punk is absolutely killing you with the whole shredder thing. And
it
was just
go ahead. The only line that Nash really got in there was the fact that he called CM Punk a Waffle House cooker. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was. But other than that, like for anything else, and just as you were saying, like for anything else in any other situation, you give Kevin Nash a mic and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And the same is true as long as Scott Hall is sober. You can do that with him too, because he would have some excellent opening segments where he would just be in the ring by himself. And when he was on and when he wanted to do it, there are few better,
Exactly. And then Hogan, Hogan was always very charismatic, very comfortable on the mic.
He took like a duck to water. He was slower though, because he was from the old school and from the old, from the territory days. Of course, Scott Hall was too, but Kevin and Scott figured out how to speed up with the speed of television, with the speed of television had become by 1997, and Hogan never had.
Yeah.
But he didn't need to either. His was more about content and overall nastiness.
Yes.
So he just kind of morphed his own way of doing things. And then, of course, along with the vignettes, the way the vignettes were cut together.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just genius because it took all of the weaknesses of Hogan's kind of more old school promo game and sped them up sufficiently so that it didn't even matter.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And another group I wanted to toss out there, even though they weren't together for very long, the Hart Foundation in the late 90s, Bret Hart did some of his best work as a heel or anti-hero, whatever you want to call him. His promos, shooting on America, but still being a face over in Europe and Canada. That was some very compelling TV.
It really was, yeah. And he started out not talking at all.
Yeah.
Neidhart did all the talking for a long, long, long time. And so when he was finally given the mic to do it, it was rough at first.
Yeah.
But he managed to, and there would be moments of, I remember during his angle with Shawn Michaels, it seemed to go on forever. There were moments where there would kind of be these uncomfortable pauses where you could kind of feel him trying to figure out where to go next.
Yeah.
But still, even at that, he was already getting better. And certainly by that point, he had become virtually unstoppable. He had a slower style, just like Hogan did. But when he knew to hit, he would hit and hit hard.
Yeah, and it also helped a lot that he didn't really care for Michaels at that point too. So
yeah, it was real. Yeah,
very real.
It was completely and totally real at that point.
Yeah,
they could stand each other because I mean, from what we know backstage, Shawn Michaels was not easy to get along with, and he has since copped to this. Like, he has no problem telling you this now, the way he was, and.
Yeah.
And Bret didn't like it. In fact, really very few people did, other than the members of the Clique and maybe a few others.
Yeah.
So he was just difficult at that point. So yeah, that animosity was so real. I was thinking too, I want to dive back a little further in terms of Mike and go back to the Fabulous Freebirds.
Oh, Michael Hayes.
Let's go there.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael Hayes, he was the chatterbox, the one that would run his mouth, and Gordy was kind of the muscle Yeah, that worked so well, man. That worked very well.
He
I'm
was
not.
go ahead. No, you first, please.
I'm not as familiar with the Freebirds, but from what I've seen of them, like that dynamic worked so well with him just kind of being like the one that would run his mouth and then hide behind Gordy, and it worked so well.
Like that's to me like that is the beginning of compelling stables.
Yeah.
I remember because I'm old. I remember World Class, and being shut up. And I remember that's not nice. Okay, but I remember watching World Class when I was a kid, and I couldn't see it very often. I could only because in the days of territory wrestling, not all territories broadcast everywhere.
Yeah.
Like on the East Coast, you had Mid Atlantic and you had WWF at the time, and championship wrestling from Florida would kind of be more, more down in the South. Unfortunately, I couldn't get that either. I'd have watched it. If I could have seen Eddie Graham, I would have, and
Yeah.
Mike Graham, his son, too. But there was a lot going on in those places, but I could get Mid Atlantic and I could get WWF. And when I went to see my grandparents, I could get World Class, even though they lived just outside of San Francisco, California. You
Oh,
could
okay.
still get it out there on what amounted to public access. But I would watch that sometimes, and the feud between the Freebirds and the Von Erichs is just absolutely classic stuff. Because you had on one side you had like the Von Erichs, the All American boys,
Yeah.
Fritz's boys, and they were kind of pampered poodles and perceived to be very well taken care of because there really was no secret that Fritz was kind of in control.
Yeah, he ran it. Yeah, he ran the operation.
Yeah, so it almost there was a bit of there was definitely manufacturing in real life, but it almost translated to what was happening on the television set. And then you had these rough boys that didn't really belong, these interlopers that were kind of trying to beat up on these kept young men, that Fritz loved. It was just tailor because that's really what they were.
Yeah.
It really was like that. I mean, Fritz had the book in World Class, and he really was taking care of all of his boys, including the ones that obviously the ones that they led a very tragic life. We know this already.
Yeah, they're the Kennedys of wrestling, unfortunately.
Yeah, they really are. It just there's unfortunately out of all of those boys, there's only one left now. There's just Kevin.
Yeah.
They've all passed away. Many of them from suicide and drug abuse and just living very, very rough lives. Mike in
And
particular passed away because he just couldn't live up to his brothers because he had toxic shock. Toxic shock syndrome. He couldn't do it.
and wasn't he like 5'9" or 5'8"? He wasn't as big as his brothers. There was something.
Yeah, and his bones were very brittle too. He probably
Yeah.
had some form of osteoporosis even at that young age, and he just
Yeah.
couldn't do it. And then of course there was that whole thing with Lance Von Erich, and Lance was not a Von Erich.
Yeah.
And they tried to create another Von Erich. I think it was after Mike passed away, and the public found out about it.
Yeah.
And then at that point, they didn't trust the Von Erichs anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
It was.
so
It's
lie
very
to us
sad.
now. Like, go ahead.
Yeah. It's. I'm just saying. It's very sad. I hate even thinking about that. And then there was another. The youngest one. I think it was like 2 or 3 when he passed away. There was a younger one. Yeah. The whole thing is just very.
Yeah, that was Mike.
Very unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah. It's but it was up before any of this happened.
Yeah.
They were kind of the all-American Texas boys that were, they were terminal do-gooders. None of them ever turned heel or anything like that.
Yeah.
They were just the good boys. And then you had the personification of bad boy, the Freebirds, and Michael did all the talking. Michael Hayes did all the talking. Well, all the yelling. But but he did it so well. Like, it wasn't just aimlessly yelling, like you see a lot of people do nowadays.
Yeah.
It had direction. It always had direction, and he was legitimately scary.
Yeah.
So I remember back when they were in Georgia Championship Wrestling, which is another one I could see whenever I wanted. Saturdays at 6:05 p.m. on Channel 17 at the studios at Techwood Drive. See, I remember stuff. But I remember he was in a match with, who was it? No, Jimmy Garvin. That's what it was. See, I said I remembered it, and then I forgot. Jimmy Garvin was in a match with some job guy, because it was always like stars versus jobbers on Georgia.
Oh yeah, that was WWF, WCW. All those places did that.
Yeah, they all did it. Yeah. but it was a match with him and some job guy. I forget who the job guy was. It probably Mike Jackson or Mulkey or somebody like that. But at any rate, of course, Jimmy Garvin won, and he was involved in a feud with the Freebirds at that point. He wasn't yet a Freebird, so this was fairly early on.
Okay.
And so he won the match, and he went to put his hand up, and all of the Freebirds were just on him like white on rice. It was just instant. I remember part of it. I was sitting downstairs by myself. I was like 9 at this point. I think I was just a child. And I remember Michael Hayes had Jimmy Garvin down on the mat, and he was rubbing his face into the mat in the most violent way I've ever seen. And I remember I went, oh no. Like my little 9-year-old mind was freaking out, and I ran upstairs and was like, mommy, they're beating up Jimmy Garvin. Like, I was so into it. She's like, oh, sweetie, let me come down and look. She played into it beautifully, because she knew. And she came downstairs. She's like, oh my gosh, that poor man, It was so funny, but I was totally sucked in. I was totally into this as a 9-year-old kid. And Michael Hayes became the scariest person I'd ever seen in my life.
I'll have to go back and check that out if I can find that on YouTube.
I think it was Gordon Soley was still there. So this literally would have been like, I think it was late 82.
Okay.
And of course, Gordon Soley always helped because he never yelled really.
Yeah.
So when he would get excited about something, like, oh, this is a problem. He wasn't like some other commentators who just kind of yell all the time. And a lot of them do that. Like, a lot of them overuse that.
Yeah.
But Gordon Soley never did. If you remember, Gordon was fairly calm a lot of the time. So when he would yell, you knew something was deeply wrong, He was just kind of losing it while this is happening in the ring. It was just absolutely genius storytelling. And for me, it made Michael Hayes the scariest human being who ever lived because of how far he was willing to go in the ring.
Yeah. Because he wasn't very imposing there. He wasn't big at all or anything like that. He was just
no. Yeah, not at all. He was fairly normal size, but he had this, this nice head of blonde hair and everything.
And that thick mustache he had. And
yeah. Well, sometimes he had it, sometimes he didn't. Like earlier in his career, he didn't. But when he got that mustache, he became just that much nastier. But he was just like the scariest thing going because of the way he spoke. Yeah. He was far more imposing than he ever would have been otherwise. But it was just
exactly.
His mic was just absolutely crazy.
Exactly.
And then he had the muscle to back it up. I mean, Terry Gordy was 285 pounds. This was a big dude. And then Buddy Jack too, who was just absolutely devious from the word go,
Yeah, and that's why that dynamic works so well. It's like he can talk trash, he could run behind his friends, and they'd handle it,
Oh yeah. He was a great cowardly heel, but if he needed to step up, he would do that too. Example A, Jimmy Garvin on the mat getting his face ripped into the mat. I still remember that. Like I still can't let it go because it was such genius storytelling. But yeah, they were just fantastic. And then that whole thing in World Class with them feuding with the Von Erichs. I don't know. And maybe it's just because storytelling is so different, different then than it is now. And you could go longer.
Yeah.
You could really drag a story out then because we had a longer span of attention than we do now.
Yeah, I mean, there's no pay-per-views, no internet,
There were still pay-per-views. It's just that there was
very spread out. Exactly.
And you could still take a story through a pay-per-view and it didn't have to resolve. It could continue. I mean, that's why, without veering too far off topic, that's why Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes went on for years.
Yeah.
Because number one, they were good enough to do it. Number two, we had a longer span of attention, so we'd let them do it.
Yeah. Because I remember, the Freebirds and the Von Erichs, that lasted over a decade, I think.
It was a long time. It was a really, really long time. It was a number of years until they left WCW WCCW over some kind of a money dispute, I think it was. I mean, I don't know about Fritz, but I would have moved heaven and earth to keep them. Because it's like you've just let you've just let the Von Erichs' reason for existence go away. Like, you have nothing without you have to have really bad to go against really good. It's just common sense storytelling. And he let really bad go.
Yeah.
And then what were they supposed to do after that? Like, you have to create more bad for them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were just absolutely master nemesis. And all of that, just about all of it, had to do with what Michael Hayes did on the microphone.
Yeah, he was amazing. He was one of a kind on the mic.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I agree with you. What other staples can you come up with? So we talked
That
about
were
the Freebirds already. What else you got?
Well, there was a Nation of Domination.
Yes.
Farouk was really good.
Yes.
Obviously that's where The Rock found his groove and he became The Rock, obviously. But Farouk was very imposing. He kind of had like a Chuck D type of, demeanor on the mic.
Gay did.
And yeah, I remember Nation of Domination. I remember the feud with Ahmed Johnson, them calling him Uncle Tom, and it got heated.
Yeah.
It got really heated. It was
He
great.
did. And he'd always, it was interesting because, of course, we know Farouk as Ron Simmons.
Yeah.
He went back to that name later, but when he started, he came in just as an ex-football player from Georgia. I think he's from Georgia. Yes.
I thought it was Florida. I'm
Was it
thinking
Florida?
It
Okay.
might have been Florida. Yeah.
You're probably right. I'm probably wrong. But he came in as just this ex-football player guy, just wearing tights like everybody else, and he would go in and have decent matches. In fact, very good ones, really. On the mic, he was good, not great,
Yeah.
but good. In the ring, he was good, not great.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, to watch him adapt to the Attitude Era and what wrestling became, and to flourish like that. And there were stumbles. I mean, you remember when he first came in as Farouk, he had like the gladiator headgear.
The light blue and
it was terrible. It was like, oh no, don't kill him. Like,
then they brought him in with Sonny, and then they put him with I think who was the Clarence Tom? What's his name? Clarence Mason.
Clarence Mason. That's exactly a real attorney, by the way.
Yeah, and then he was with Crush and Savio Vega, and then they split.
Yeah,
and that's when he went like full on like Black Panther, and that's when it just really clicked.
And his mic just went from like here to like, he just exploded on the mic at that point because he had a reason to be upset, and he used real life to.
Yeah,
he was just so good. You were saying
there was an episode. There used to be a show called WWF Wire. I think it was Saturday morning. I think Todd Pettengill hosted it, and they would take calls from fans. And I remember Farouk completely ripped this fan to shreds. I forgot what the fan said. The fan called him like a racist and asked him why you're so mad all the time. And Farouk just completely ripped this dude in half. And I remember that vividly. And it was just like, holy crap, man! Like, who is this guy?
Oh, that's funny. So what was the show?
I think it was called WWF Wire. It came on Saturday mornings. It didn't last very long, but I remember Todd Pettengill used to host it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because there was a point there in my wrestling watching where I kind of, as I said earlier, things just got a little too wild for me, and I kind of backed off for a while.
This might have been right before the Attitude Era. I want to say what, mid '96, late '96.
Mid '96. Yeah, I was out by then.
Okay.
I wasn't watching. I think I was trying in vain to keep up with what WCW was doing at that point.
Well, I mean, at that point, WCW, NWO was as fresh as it was fresh, so.
No. I mean, at this point, I'm talking like when it was bad. Like before Eric Bischoff came in.
Oh, okay.
And fixed it, like then.
Back when Watts was still running the book, huh?
Yeah, that nonsense that Ron Simmons had to put up with back then,
Yeah.
It was so bad, but I was trying. I was trying, because if nothing else, it was identifiable for me, and it was more accessible at that point.
Yeah, I understand.
But yeah, that's to watch, and of course this was before promos were so heavily scripted as they are now.
Yeah.
To watch him take, like, he may be, of all of the people that I can think of or that we may talk about, he may have been the most improved. Just because I remember where he came from, when he was with Georgia Championship Wrestling, and even before that, other more regional promotions, to just watch him go from these nice guy promos, that kind of thing, to Doom, to Nation of Domination. Like, it was just, he was so good. He was so good.
It just fit him perfectly. Like, his voice, he had a booming projected voice. Like I said, it was like Chuck D, with Public Enemy. His voice just carried. It it rang, you know.
It really does. And I remember years ago, I want to say this was probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, I met him at the what is now the Lowe's Madison Hotel in DC,
Okay.
just doing an open mic thing, doing sound for it. And the WWE stars happened to be staying in there that night because they had a show nearby at what is now the Capital One Arena. At the time, I think it was
Okay.
called the Verizon Center. And I still call it the Verizon Center. I can't wait to say it. But at any rate, on that night, they were there, and I remember MVP being really tall, by the way. He's a big dude.
Oh, is he?
And you might not think so, but big, just putting it out there, big dude.
Okay.
But I remember I remember we had just finished up, and Ron Simmons was waiting for a car, something, I forget what it was, but he was standing outside, and dude is just gigantic. He's huge. And I saw him out there, and I'm like, I really don't want to inconvenience him, but if I don't go say something to him before I leave, I'm going to regret it.
Yeah.
And so I tentatively, went out the sliding glass doors, and I said, I please forgive me if your mind is elsewhere. I just had to come and say hi to you and that I'm a big fan. And he turned around and looked at me, and he was so polite. He couldn't have been nicer. He shook my hand. He gave me an autograph. I still have
Nice.
it somewhere. He just could not have been nicer. The vibe he gave off was so much different than I thought it would be, given the fact that it was 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
He was just so accommodating and so pleasant. So Ron, if you're not watching this, but I'm really grateful for that. Thank you for because I was half dead, and I'm sure he was too. But he just couldn't have been nicer.
Yeah, because he's a scary looking dude.
He is. He's just big. Dude is just big.
Yeah.
He's bigger than you think. I mean, for as big as MVP really is,
Yeah.
Ron is just that much bigger, but such a nice guy. Like, he was just so nice to me, and I was really grateful for that. Because I was afraid he might not be given the hour.
Yeah. I definitely understand that.
Yeah. But just, his promo game just went through the roof with Nation of Domination. It's probably where The Rock picked up most of his too.
That's a good point. It's a very good point. And he doesn't get enough credit for that.
No, not at all. And I mean, it's probably where all of his attitude came from.
Yeah.
And probably quite a bit of that mic work came from being in there, because up until that point, he'd been Rocky Maivia.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they drove, down the road a couple of times, and he, bounced some ideas off of him, or, gave him some tips along the way. Definitely.
Oh yeah. You could even sense some of it in Rocky's swag. Like, you can kind of feel the Ron Simmons in him.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, like I said earlier, like a lot of that probably had to do with like having a legitimate axe to grind.
Yeah.
That unfortunately we're still grinding that axe in 2020.
Yeah.
Which speaks for itself, really. But
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I mean, even back then they did, they were trying to they wanted attention for black wrestlers, and man, they had mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause that was a very different time, you've been going back to like 1991 when I first started watching, huge fan. But even I kind of noticed that there weren't a lot of black wrestlers or a lot of Hispanic wrestlers. So that's why I kind of gravitated towards guys like Ahmed Johnson when he came in. It's this big dude, man, who was body slamming Yokozuna. I'm like, this dude looks like Henry Armstrong. You know what I mean? Like, it was crazy, and when the Nation came in, like, it had my undivided attention.
Yeah, Ahmed Johnson he had Vince's look. Like, first and foremost, he had that look. He could talk pretty well.
Yeah.
The only problem with Ahmed Johnson is that he would hurt people. He hurt Ron badly in one match that they were in. Ron left the match bleeding internally, or Farouk. So he was dangerous. He was kind of like Nia Jax is now, just even more dangerous.
Yeah, because look how big the dude was. Jacked. The dude was. Yeah.
He was completely. He was even bigger than Goldberg, which is saying something, because Goldberg was gigantic too.
Yeah, and he was bigger than British the Bulldog. I remember they had during their face-to-face conference, they had the arm wrestling match back in '96, and Bulldog was always a huge dude, but Ahmed was just that much bigger though.
Well, Bulldog was huge for other reasons.
Yeah, that's true.
He was pharmaceutically enhanced. I didn't get the sense that Ahmed Johnson was. I think quite a bit of that, if not all of it, was probably pretty natural.
Yeah, I mean, because you look at him now, unfortunately, he's a big dude, but it's not muscle no more. But he was probably just always going to be a big guy no matter what.
Oh yeah, and I mean by the time he got to, I can't remember what his name was now, but
Big T,
what's that? Thank
Big
you. I
T,
couldn't
yeah,
think of it.
Big
By the
T,
time he got to WCW, he was kind of on his way down,
yeah, yeah,
and he clearly wasn't working out as much, and he seemed to care less in the ring. And I mean, he was never Cedric Alexander, but he had a good pace and a good rhythm in the ring, if nothing else. Even though he was hurting people by the time he got
yeah,
to W, not so much.
that's pretty much it for him
There's
in
some stuff.
WCW.
There's some stuff of him. I didn't mean to cut you off, but there's some stuff on just on that same subject. There's stuff of him on YouTube, kind of later,
Okay,
and it's hard to watch. It's
yeesh.
literally difficult to watch. He's nowhere near what he was in terms of overall presentation. And
Yeah.
so you were saying, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, that was it. I had nothing else.
Oh, gotcha. Happens when I do too much talking. You
No, you're
run
good.
out of stuff. But okay, so we talked about NWO, we talked Nation of Domination, we talked DX, we talked Freebirds. I really wanted to talk Freebirds, but we got Freebirds just because they're older and nobody thinks of them anymore. They were responsible for so much of what we're seeing now, and nobody thinks of them anymore. There's definitely one we left out, of course, but who else can you think of in terms of stables? What else you got?
As far as like
I'm,
mic work,
I'm thinking of like two actually in terms of mic work.
I mean, you got the Heenan family, but a lot of that was Bobby Heenan himself.
Yeah, I don't even know that counts really.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, it kind of does. I see what you're saying, but so much
Yeah,
of it, to your point,
yeah,
like so much of it was Heenan, and Heenan was just genius.
yeah.
Absolutely. And they weren't like united in purpose like your traditional stable would be. They were just united because Bobby was doing all the talking.
Yeah, and that's how it was in the '80s. Like he had like what 7 or 8 guys under him, but they weren't always tagging together. He would have like
Yeah.
3 or 4. Yeah, he'd come out 3 or 4 times during the night, manage this guy, and
Yeah,
you know,
because then if we're doing that, which I'm fine with, by the way, if we're
yeah.
talking him, then you got to talk Albano, who was just madness.
Oh yeah,
Lou,
Lost Mullins. Yeah,
Lou Albano's history of music. All I have to say about that. You have to see it on YouTube.
I'll have to check that out.
There's a video for it. I did a Majesty of Music thing probably about a year and a half ago, and I went buck wild on that whole wrestling album. It's like one of my prized possessions. It's so good. Along with and I never did this, I should, but I also have I Bite the Songs by Freddie Blassie, classy Freddie Blassie.
Okay.
It's genius. It's Pencil Neck Geek is like the #1 record of all time. It's so good.
Freddie Blassie. I don't hear that name very often no more.
It's so good. But he's another one that's kind of responsible for Malcolm Bivens now, who we have, and I'm so glad to see managers coming back
Yeah.
and even
Slowly,
like
but it's happening though.
it's glacial, but
Yeah.
at least we're getting something out of it, and
Yeah.
Malcolm Bivens is certainly the guy to push it along, and then Robert Stone, who's just killing life right now on
He's
NXT.
amazing.
So funny. I never knew that could be, but he's just killing it as like broken Robert Stone. It's dude.
Oh man,
I was
throwing up all over the place, and oh man.
Yes, he threw up in the ring with Stefan, the referee, like right there, jumping like 50 feet. It was just,
Oh my goodness.
I was sitting there just like, it was so good. I did not know he had that in him.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I was absolutely in tears. So you're right. Like they are kind of coming back, but all this stuff, and I mean, even that comes from Heenan.
Yeah.
Heenan was the perfect cowardly manager.
He didn't get anybody over. He was the GOAT, period.
But see, I don't know, like, because he managed to get, I forget what his name was in WWE. Shame on me.
The Red Rooster?
Hercules Hernandez.
Oh,
It was just
Hercules.
Hercules.
Okay, yeah.
That's all it was. But he was responsible for getting Hercules over. Hercules on his own wouldn't have done it. Not that he couldn't talk,
Mhm.
but he wasn't Heenan. No one was Heenan. He could tell a story like no one.
And he was so quick off the cusp with everything. Anything you threw
Dude.
at him, he would throw right back at you.
Oh yeah. him and Gorilla, come on, like,
They're still my favorite tandem of all time behind the
oh
booth,
yeah, and they were
without a
such
doubt.
good friends. And they were such good friends. Like, it
Yeah,
was
I mean,
so obvious that they were friends. You
yeah,
know,
I mean, we had Ross and King, and I know that, but man, Gorilla and Brain, that was it for me though.
that was as good as it got. Because you're right, and a lot of it was just Gorilla throwing stuff at him,
Yeah, and
and
he
he
always
was
had to answer.
so on his toes. It didn't matter what you said, he'd come back. He always came back. Like, take the banana peel out of your ears, or say all kinds of absolutely ridiculous things, just because he could tell that he was being challenged.
Yeah, I still remember when Shawn Michaels threw Marty Jannetty through the window, and Heenan was saying that Jannetty was being a coward. He tried to jump through the window to get away from Michaels.
Yeah, yeah.
Hilarious, man.
And he would turn coats so fast. I knew it. Like, it was just, Heenan was just priceless, absolutely priceless. And he didn't make something out of nothing, but he made something out of not much often.
He did.
When he
He
had
did.
somebody to work with, he was just absolutely phenomenal. But I was kind of more, see, okay, so I'll go ahead and ask you, because this is where the hole in my wrestling knowledge exists. So
Okay.
Los Boricuas with Savio Vega, um, and the
They
people that,
were they were okay.
okay,
They were feuding with DOA and the Truth
right,
Commission and the Nation at the time. They nothing about them really stood out, but the stable itself made a lot of sense given what they were going for. It was There's a lot of racial tension there. You had the all black group feuding with the all white group, feuding with the all Puerto Rican group. But I don't really remember anything about them specifically that stood out as far as ring work or mic work though. But I do remember reading somewhere about I have a book called Titan is Falling. It was about WWF back in 1995 when things weren't going too well. A lot of
ooh,
backstage stuff. Yeah, check out that book if you ever get a chance.
that'd be fun.
Um,
Titan is falling, you said?
yeah, or Titan is Sinking. There's a 3-book series that documents 95, 96, and 97. So kind of the Titan, I think it was the Titan is Sinking. I forgot what the middle one was called, but then the 97 edition was called Titan Shattered, where things were kind of back on the upswing again.
Okay.
Very
I should
interesting
put a link in the
series.
description for it once I find it, so you guys
Yeah, I'll
can.
have to send it. I'll have to send it to you. But they basically document, pretty much from Royal Rumble to Survivor Series, and they kind of give you backstories on a lot of the wrestlers that came through during those times. And I remember reading Vince when he repackaged Vega from the coin gimmick, which was terrible, by the way.
Was it okay? I've
Yeah,
heard about it, but I never actually
yeah.
saw it. Okay.
He made his vision for Savio Vega was to make him the next Pedro Morales. That's what his goal was originally.
You could do worse. Okay.
Yeah, that's what he was going for. But I guess I don't really remember a whole lot about Savio's time on the mic or anything. But nothing about him really stood out though.
Okay. Gotcha. I wondered,
Yeah,
because I've heard him on the mic a bit, and he is good. He can do
is he
it. He can
okay?
certainly do it. But not necessarily great. But I just kind of, like, I
Exactly.
wondered how that stable worked out, because that's that's
I mean,
largely where the hole in
they
my
were
knowledge.
decent, but there was just there was so much talent, and during that era, I mean, he just got overshadowed basically.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. And I mean, they were
Yeah,
really going for the gusto then and trying to be as
yeah,
blue as humanly possible. And not everybody did that.
yeah,
So they might have had some problems there too. Just one trying to top the other so much that it's like, where
yeah,
do you go?
exactly.
So, which always happens. And it happened to WCW too. I mean,
Yeah.
NWO took over life. So there was NWO, and then there was like other guys that you didn't care so much about. Um, that's a bit of an oversimplification, of course, but that's
Yeah,
basically
I
what
know.
it came down to. So
I know what you mean.
okay, so we've covered kind of Los Boricuas then a bit. Um, what about the mic work of the New Day?
Top of the class.
I mean,
Top of the class.
say it louder so they hear you in the
I
background.
mean, that's top of the class, man. That they would have fed in so well during the Attitude Era. They would have blended in perfectly
Would
without a
they though?
problem.
Because
I
they
think
were.
so.
You think, because the reason that I'm questioning it is because, again, like at that point, and maybe I'm just missing something. Admittedly,
Mhm.
there's holes in my knowledge from that time period anyway. But back at that point, like everything was just so blue.
But think about it this way. Look at Biggie on Twitter. Okay,
Okay.
look at wrestling. We know wrestling now, right? We know how restricted they are as far as the mic work
Yeah.
because of the networks and PC culture. Take that away in the late '90s. Give Biggie a mic, Xavier Woods. I think they do just as good today as I mean I think they do just as good as back then as they do today.
It would be different, but yeah. Okay, I
Yeah,
see what you're saying. Yeah, because
yeah.
yeah,
They might not be as high up in the card. They might not. They might have never made it to like the New Age Outlaws level or the Hardy Boys or the Dudleys, but they'd have been very entertaining though.
Big E on late night Twitter though.
Yeah.
There's only one that's anywhere near that bad, and it's AJ Gray. If you're not following him on Twitter, my
Yeah.
gosh. About 1 o'clock in the morning, AJ loses his ever loving mind. The only difference between them is that Biggie doesn't necessarily care what time it is.
Exactly.
Every once in a
Exactly.
while, he'll throw something in there. But I mean, for me, because I'm old because I'm old and I read my Bible. Like I like the fact that they're just completely nuts and that they work clean.
Yeah.
Um,
That's it. Yeah.
Never mind the whole TV thing, but I mean, think of it. Like when you are forced to work clean in this culture, or the culture from when it is that they formed, what,
Hmm.
6-7 years ago, and it's been a minute.
Yeah.
But working clean and doing it well and still being really funny and entertaining and engaging isn't the easiest thing in the world. I can cop to that. And man, they can totally do it. Like, they have no problem with that.
Yeah. And like I said, they're such a great cohesive unit. Like it just works. Kofi they complements Xavier. Xavier complements Big E, and Big E complements it's yeah. They might be the one group that if they ever broke up, that would really hurt. Like that would really hurt. Like I expect most groups to break up, but that one would really hurt though. And I don't think I could have ever said it about any other stable at any time in history, as far as when I was watching.
Yeah, I agree. And like, it's you could almost go deeper with it, because like it's like not only would it hurt, but I don't even think it would be necessary.
It wouldn't. It would definitely boost ratings. It would be compelling. I would definitely tune in to see what was happening. But yeah, it would be kind of devastating. It would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, but then the thing is, like, as is the case with all breakups, like, I remember, and this, it wouldn't be the
Hmm.
same, I know, but I remember when, I'm just trying to think of something real quick, and obviously Shad's been in the news lately because he passed, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like the breakup of Crime Time and how little that actually yielded in the grand scheme of anything. I mean, they broke up and it was very compelling at first. Shad go, "This is my time," and turning heel
Yeah.
as he did. And he did it well, but it just didn't yield very much. I mean, it yielded
Well,
maybe 2-3 matches and it was kind of over. So it's like
yeah.
after a faction like that breaks up, it's got, then all of a sudden you've attached a lifespan to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. The only difference between Prime Time and New Day is Prime Time, they were never accomplished. They never won the tag titles for whatever reason. I still don't know why that never happened.
I don't either.
Um, so I guess by the time they did break up, I'm not sure if fans really cared about Prime Time in general. If you get what I'm saying, like
It's true.
New Day, they're decorated. They're what, 7 or 8 time tag team champions, and
Yeah, and I mean, not every run was meaningful, but
yeah,
yeah,
and,
absolutely, they've had
and
it
then
a long time.
and then Kofi's former champion now, so he has that going for him as well. So I think it would be more impactful than the Shad JTG stuff.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I was
Yeah,
just using like Tag Team X as an example,
yeah,
or even Faction X, because there's certainly
yeah,
been factions that have broken up too. But I just, New Day has been so impactful. I mean, I can't think of another team, or really even another individual, that has sold as much merch as they have.
yeah.
They've moved merch like crazy. They probably kept WWE's merch shop in business just on
Oh
their
yeah.
own, with all kinds of things. Dude, they had cereal, like legitimate, and not just like the decorative boxes that you get with a T-shirt, which
The bootios.
they had Bootios. Like, I have it in my cupboard, like because I'm a mark. Hear me roar. But they had cereal.
Yeah,
So how many entities within sports entertainment can say that they've had cereal? They ain't
yeah.
many. Like, it's
And they got their
pretty
own
incredible.
podcast too.
Yeah, they have a podcast that's still running, and I think it does the best out of all of them, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't seen the numbers in a bit, but
That wouldn't surprise me at all.
it does incredibly well, and it's very compelling. Especially the one that they did just a couple of weeks ago. By the way, if you haven't heard that one, you need to.
Okay.
Especially if you're not Black or if you're not African American. There's a lot
Yeah.
to learn from that podcast, and we need to be learning big time.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Probably all could stand to learn a thing or two from that podcast. It was just so good. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, they're just so impactful for so many different reasons. I mean, they're
Yeah.
impactful as comedy. They're impactful as serious.
Yeah.
They can be very, very insightful. I mean, Xavier Woods is a doctor, for crying out loud. This is not a stupid guy. And I mean, and they're all three of them are so erudite when they speak, and they've just got a lot to say and so much to draw from. That
And the other thing that you brought up, Xavier, I still don't think we've seen the best of him on the mic yet.
I don't either. I really don't. And I wonder, like, I wonder what he heel would look like.
Yeah. See, I've always envisioned with the New Day, like if they ever did break up, I always envisioned it would happen. Like I say, Xavier returns whenever he's, cleared to return. It would happen right around that time, and he would be just kind of caught up in the middle between Kofi and Big E, kind of trying to put the pieces back together while they were beefing. And I think that'd be very compelling, and I think that would yield some really, really good mic work, really, really good promos from Xavier.
I think it might too. And I remember the way that I've just realized it now. We've left another one out, but I remember when they broke up the Shield.
Oh yeah.
Because we got to talk about the Shield. But when they broke up the Shield, I remember we were in dignified discussions talking about this was the other place. Other place. Yeah, I said it, Kendra. Hit me.
Yep.
She's gonna smash a chair over my head. But the other place, we were talking in the open thread over there,
Mhm.
and I remember saying this. I'll cop to it. This is never gonna work. Seth Rollins, like, because Seth Rollins was so nothing. He wasn't nothing. That's not fair. But he wasn't as substantial as Dean Ambrose had been,
Yeah.
or as even Roman Reigns had been, because they had definitive roles for both of them within that faction.
Yeah.
But Seth was just, he was great, but he was just there. You know what I mean? Like, he
He
didn't
felt
have a
like he
definitive role other
he
than like
felt like
Peacemaker, maybe.
he felt like the bumper and the spot monkey of the group. Like he did a lot of cool, stuff in the ring, but I felt like Roman was the muscle. We knew that Vince was high on him. We knew Triple H was high on him.
Oh
And
yeah.
we knew and Dean was the talker.
Yes.
He was Brian Pillman, he was Piper, he was Joker, kind of all rolled up in one.
Yeah, he was
He was
completely, and he's thankfully in AEW, he's still unhinged. Thank you,
yeah.
Jon Moxley, for being
And
even
it
unhinged.
and I always figured that it would. So here's my thought process when Batista quit. I kind of figured, well, it'd make more sense to have Roman Reigns replace him. He's the younger, bigger, faster version of Batista, basically. But then they went with Seth Rollins, and I was just kind of like, huh?
Yeah.
That was my initial thoughts too. And it took me a couple months to really kind of, okay, he's gonna be okay as a heel.
Yeah.
But at first it was kind of I don't know about this.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. That's the first thing I thought. In fact, I remember saying it, like, but I remember saying, "quote unquote," why Seth?
Yeah.
And not like, why did you do this, Seth? But why Seth? Why does this matter?
Yeah.
He did it really, really well. They executed it very, very well. And the truth is, this is why we're fans and they're writers. They get it. They see the person for who they are.
Yeah.
Vince okayed it, so we can say Vince is senile all we want to, but he was crazy like a fox on that one, because he completely nailed. He saw things in Seth that we were not able to see, and while that turn was happening, all that other stuff that we didn't see came to the surface, and we were like, if had it been anybody else, it wouldn't have been as good.
Yeah, he was like the perfect cowardly opportunist heel, kind of in the same vein of as Edge, basically.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities there. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, he's especially like now.
Yeah.
And really, like, what we're getting now from Seth is something I can't recall seeing from anyone else. Like, this is pretty unique.
He's kind of going back to the CM Punk, the SES days, the Straight Society. Yeah, that's what this reminds me of.
Yeah, it's a bit, but it's still his own like Seth Lee spin on it. It's still not like anything else. It harkens to other things.
Yeah.
But it's still very much kind of like his own thing.
And speaking of the stable with Seth,
Yeah,
I get the feeling that Dominic is going to join his stable. That's my prediction.
I wonder about that. Yeah, I was headed to that stable. Yeah.
And if that happens, that's gonna be really good.
Yeah, yeah. Somewhere in there, he's clear. Dominic has clearly been working very hard.
Yeah, he looked good. When was it? I think it was Backlash or Monday Night Raw. When he
Yeah,
ran in, he
yeah.
looks
When
pretty
he
good.
ran in,
Yeah,
he looked like he belonged in there.
yeah, he looked crisp. He looked agile. Athletic.
He
He's
went
he's getting
from.
there on the mic.
I'm sorry.
He's getting there on the mic. He kind of reminds me of like a younger. I'm trying to think. Who does he remind me of? You remember Shane McMahon right before he turned, when he joined Vince? That's kind of what he reminds me of right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was just that, like, he was so completely unconvincing, and even I maybe we part company here, but even in those promos with his dad, it just felt very soap opera. Like, as the world turns
yeah,
will return after these messages,
yeah,
it didn't feel real enough. And he's still learning, to be fair.
yeah,
And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact too that Ray is just not good on the mic. He just
yeah.
can't
He
do
never
it.
has been.
He was
Every now and
forced
then,
into a position that he
yeah.
can't come through.
Every now and then he'll break out something that's compelling, but for the most part, it's in the ring work with him.
Yeah, it just felt like straight Telemundo to me.
Yeah.
It didn't feel sorry. I remember
Yeah.
saying that to Sam, and Sam laughed his head off too, but it just doesn't feel, it feels very inauthentic and very scripted when
Yeah.
Ray speaks, especially when it was on a subject like that where, like, the content has to be right. He
Yeah.
must know on some level he can't hang. So I'll just
Yeah.
read the cue cards. And it felt
Yeah.
very much like Dominic was kind of doing the same thing. But man, he got into the ring and that felt really right. It looked right. It looked like he belonged in there.
Yeah.
Finally, like, it worked. So he's
Yeah.
clearly working really, really hard to get better. And I think it would be fun, to see him in that stable. And speaking of that stable, it doesn't have a name, but let's go there, shall we?
Okay.
You've got Seth, who's perfect. You've got Austin Theory, who left we should go to that one too, who left that other stable to
They don't got a
join.
name either, though, do they?
It doesn't. No, I don't think it has a name either. Neither does it need one. It's
Yeah.
cool. I'm good
Yeah.
without names. We know who they are.
Yeah.
But like Austin kind of fell from grace, and we kind of wondered what was going to happen with him. And then he joined that stable, and Buddy Murphy's been there the whole time. He's kind of like Marsha now,
Yeah.
from the Brady Bunch, kind of doing that thing now. What about me? Which I think is kind of fun, the kind of the middle child syndrome thing. But but what are you thinking about that stable in terms of kind of how it's handled on the mic?
It's for the most part, it's going pretty well. Like I said, he's not Flair or Hogan or Triple H or Nash, obviously, but he plays that role well. That Jim Jones type of role that he's doing. He does that really really well. Like I loved when he flipped out on Ray when he tried to gauge his eye out, and then backstage, Oscar Black tries to confront him, and he's just like, "Hey man, my bad. I don't know what happened out there." And it's just like you're looking at this dude, like, is this dude crazy? Did he really not know what he just did? But
But
that was great.
he was like, I had to do it. Thank you for the sacrifice. Like,
Yeah,
what? What are you
yeah,
talking about?
yeah. Like he's just crazy.
I love it though. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and he has his followers, his blind followers, like you said, Buddy Murphy and Austin Theory. It's
Yeah.
a cult. It's great.
Oh, it's genius. And the way that we got to give it up to, like, because the crew doesn't get enough credit, and the
Mhm.
director too, but the way that they shot that whole thing with Ray having his eye involuntarily removed, for lack of a better term, but just the way that they shot it, it looked completely vicious.
Yeah, it did.
It was like, oh my gosh. And then they had, blood packets to really make it work. And it just,
Yeah,
oh my, like this. And you could see a little bit of it on the step, and like, oh my, they really, what?
yeah. That was pretty
Even I'm
graphic.
watching it and I'm like, huh? It was really well done. Really, 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 really well done.
Yeah,
So, okay. So we've talked, I think, have we left any out?
we did. We skipped over evolution.
True. That's a big skip. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a very, very big
evolution.
skip, because that created careers, put
Yeah,
simply.
Yeah, I mean, has there ever been a stable that's done that? Like that, in fact, well, I guess you could say the Shield, but
Oh yeah,
Evolution, yeah, but Evolution, that was their goal. Like, hey, we're gonna get these two guys, these two young guys over, and it worked.
it completely worked. I mean, who knows what becomes of Randy Orton without it?
Yeah,
Certainly, who knows what becomes of Batista without it?
he'd be a deacon somewhere.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. It was a bunch of nothing until he got to Evolution. Same deal with Randy Orton, really,
Yeah,
and they both really became something and just spun off incredible performers. And they'll both end up with Hall of Fame rings before too much longer. Like,
yeah, two of them individually, and then with Evolution.
oh yeah, definitely, yeah. I mean, who would have thought without Evolution? And I mean, these were athletes that were incredible, just incredible on their own. But then you get Ric Flair's mic working for them,
Hmm.
or Triple H's working for them. I mean, my gosh.
Yeah, and you know what? I will say this though. I remember I never thought Batista was going to become what he became. I
I
never
didn't
saw
either.
that coming. It came out of nowhere.
Me neither. I really didn't.
I'm not even sure if Triple H knew that he had that type of ceiling.
I'd be quite surprised because it just wasn't. It was clear in no way because he was just kind of like big Cro-Magnon man.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden, somewhere in there, he found a personality,
yeah,
big
definitely.
time. And I mean, for this last return, when he was beating up on Flair, he's actually more responsible for the success of that angle,
Yeah,
probably, than just about anybody. Because at that point, unfortunately, Ric Flair is proof of what happens when you just lose it.
yeah,
He doesn't have it anymore. I wish he did. He just doesn't.
yeah,
All he's got is a name, and woo, like that's all that's left.
yeah.
We won't even talk about that segment with him and his daughter this past Monday. My gosh, it was terrible. But it's, he just can't talk. He's lost it. You can lose it. Not everyone does, but you can lose it. But at that point, like when he was in Evolution, when he was heading up Evolution, he had every bit of it.
Yeah, I remember when him and when Triple H and Flair were feuding after Triple H turned on Flair, he was still really sharp on the mic at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, he really, really was. And we can't totally leave Ric Flair without talking about the Four Horsemen themselves. Like really
Yeah.
get into it because the Four Horsemen lasted forever. I remember when I'm sure you'll remember this too, of course, but it began with Ole Anderson, with Arn
Mm-hmm.
Anderson, Tully
Bletcher.
Blanchard, Ric Flair. Those were the
Yep.
original four. And at that point, they were leaning probably just as heavily on Ole Anderson on the mic as they were Ric Flair.
Very true.
Um, and Ole could do it at that point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he became a problem later, just because of personality conflicts. I'm being really nice here, and kind of had to go. But at first, like he was kind of, for me anyway, just as a viewer, he was the one that I was listening to, even more so than Flair, because he was just so much meaner.
Yeah.
He
Well,
just didn't care about
Flair was
anyone
in
or
the
anything.
yeah Flair was basically kind of like what Triple H was in Evolution. That's what Flair was in '85 when he was at the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, and he was carrying the title at that point too, which
Exactly.
which says a lot about the strength of Ole Anderson on the mic back then.
Exactly.
And it's not like Tully and Arn couldn't talk; they could and do it
Yeah.
quite well. Thank you very much. When they were the brainbusters in WWE, they were Arn was doing plenty of talking, and
Yeah.
he's still doing plenty of it in AEW, and he's lost absolutely nothing. In fact, he may
Yeah.
even be better than he was. Dude, that segment between him and Jake the Snake Roberts in the ring,
It was really
my
good. Yeah.
gosh.
Well, Jake Roberts is, you know, he probably stood out more in the '80s than anybody else because everybody else was yelling, they're in your face. But Jake, he whispered and he made you listen. He made you lean into the TV, hear
Yeah,
what he had to say.
he would talk like this and just
Very calculated, very methodical,
very
just very
calculating,
stoic. Yeah,
very threatening.
yeah.
He just talk. He didn't need to raise his voice. He just give you
He
this. That's all he
he was
needed.
a scary dude. He's the type of guy you see on the side of the road and he's trying to hitch a ride. You're like, I'm not doing it. I'm not picking him up. That's what he looks
No.
like. He looks like that. He looked like that guy back in the '80s.
Oh yeah. And he had the greatest mullet of all time, by the way.
Exactly.
The
He
greatest
just
mullet ever.
yeah, that was a dude right there that wasn't physically imposing, man, but he just had a scary vibe to him. He just looked
Completely. And the funny thing
yeah.
is, yeah, maybe the snake might have, Damien may have helped a bit,
Yeah.
but if he didn't have Damien, he still would have been just fine. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
yeah.
Because
Yeah,
his whole
easily.
thing was, you know what I mean? It's like
He
somebody
was
carrying a title when they don't need it. Like he
yeah.
didn't desperately need Damien. Damien helped,
Yeah.
but he didn't need
They gave him the name. They gave him kind of
it.
that's what kids cling to, but yeah, he didn't need it though.
No, not at all. And I mean, even when he was working the indies just as flat out Jake Roberts,
Yeah.
he was more on the edge of doing what everybody else was doing at that point. But
Hmm.
still, I mean, there was something, and I'm so glad that Vince saw it. See, Vince isn't senile. I'm so glad that Vince noticed it. I just love it when people say that. But Vince saw that and knew that he could be even something else. And so
Yeah.
whoever it was that was responsible, whether it be Vince or Pat Patterson, who's responsible for a lot of things that went on back there, but
Yeah.
whoever it was saw more in Jake, man, and he just absolutely flew.
Yeah.
He
Agreed.
just took off as one of the most compelling characters ever. But watching him in the ring with Arn Anderson tell a very 80s old school story and take their
Hmm.
time with it and hint at things rather than just outright say them,
Yeah.
it is truly a lost art, and
Yeah.
it's undeniable proof, if you ever needed it, first of all, that they can both still talk, number one. Number two, that Arn Anderson always could.
Yeah.
And it's just that there was so much talent around him, you know, with the Ole Andersons and the Ric Flairs of the world. He just didn't need to. It
Yeah, he was
wasn't
the
necessary.
enforcer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was his nickname back then. Yeah.
Hmm.